Pickaxe.
Hello and welcome to the podcast of this week's One Life Left radio show. I'm Simon Byron.
I am Steve Curran.
There was a hurried end to the show this week that you're about to listen to. I enjoyed it. Thank you for that, Steve. Partly, though, I was going to mention the bits about the Twitch stream in this bit here.
Oh.
Which are done in the main show, which the radio listeners don't need to hear. We could have wanged on more about Starfield.
We did wang on
and
about it.
had something to say to our podcast listeners here.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
You've mixed up your audience, Steve.
I have. And you know what we could have talked about in the show instead?
What?
Which I was going to talk about here is I was going to talk about how I was asked to participate in a top 100 games vote. And the strange rules that it had.
Okay.
Because I thought it was good, but I should have talked about that in the show. But still, this is a gift for the podcast listeners. Who, if you're a radio listener, maybe you listen to the podcast as well, because you like to listen to it. And if you're a live listener, maybe listen to this 3 times. So we do record now at lunchtime on a Monday. So if you want to join us live, please do. Today we're recording at 12, which is a little bit earlier. Usually it's 12:30. If you join the Discord, you get a notification when we go live. Anyway, I got invited to play a part in a prestigious top 100.
Interesting.
And
do they is my email still working? I keep picking it up.
I'll check for you, Simon.
Okay.
And for this, I had to pick my top 10 games. But Simon, it wasn't just the top 10 games. It was the games as they were when they came out. So,
how you felt about them when they came out?
Yeah, exactly. So, the best example that I can think of, which is actually the game that I did choose as my number one, is Mario 64, which is, when it came out, it was just phenomenal, a leap above everything else, felt magical, it felt like the beginning of something new, and it was. But every year you go back, you may not, but every so often I do go back to it, and every time I play it feels slightly worse, right? And if you were going to put together a top 10 of your games of all time right now, objectively, you would say Mario Galaxy, which I've recently completed with my daughter, is a better game than Super Mario 64, objectively, in every respect. And I would say Odyssey is probably the best of all of those games. But in terms of the impact and how you felt about it at the time of release, I think 64 sort of gets leveled up right above that. Compiling a list like that is really weird and interesting, a top 10 of your own personal ones, because you end up with games in there that are really fresh, like things that came out, in the last year or so, and you're like, how does that sit next to, for example, I had Doom at number 2 because, again, I think Doom stands up slightly better today because it's, but it's still been improved upon. Anyway, a good mental exercise for people. Do you have any thoughts on what would be in your top 10, Simon?
Yeah, I do. I'm just waiting to be invited to contribute.
Okay, yeah. I'll let them know.
When are we going to see the results of yours then?
I think in a month or 2. It takes a while to add up all those numbers. I suspect that the ones that I've chosen that are the standards will be in there. So, it's just an unusual criteria. That specification that it needs to be what you felt about it when it came out, as opposed to. Yeah, okay. I look forward to seeing that, Steve. Yeah. Who else is on the panel? Don't know yet, but I'm looking forward to looking at the list of names when it comes out, and hopefully seeing yours on there as well, Simon. Or maybe you'll do your own top 100.
It'll be a top 100 of
Kojima games.
Of a few games. Well, yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because they would probably be on there for at launch, but wouldn't make the list now.
Yeah, and that's the point.
So what you're saying is Kojima's behind this, isn't it? Way to game the system. All right, we'll look forward to that. Thank you. Yes, please do keep any suggestions for what we can do on Twitch when we are there with our bonus show in a couple of weeks' time. Honestly, we're not being funny. We genuinely don't know what to do. I'm getting a bit worried about it. And work's mega busy for me, and lots of stresses, and this is only adding to them. So anything that we can do that is A, appropriate, B, achievable, and C, easy would be much appreciated. We'll see you there.
Otherwise, it's hot tubs and bathwater for us.
Indeed, and no one wants that. Good. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. Please do keep correspondence coming, and we will be back next week. Here's the show.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to One Life Left on Resonance 104.4 FM. My name is Steve Curran, and this is a radio show about video games. Hello.
Hello, Steve.
Why are you shaking your head, Simon?
Because I've just seen something that has been perhaps the most shocking thing on the internet.
What's that?
You say your name, Steve Curran, but the way that the camera was pointed as the show theme ended didn't give it. Well, I don't know you well enough to know whether that was you.
What are you talking about?
Can I share my screen on this? Rather than go through a convoluted way of showing it, it was a crotch. No, it was just a crotch shot. It was a crotch shot. The show started and it was fine, and then are you on a laptop?
Yes.
And then you closed. I don't know what you were doing, but you must have lowered the lid. And
hello.
I don't want to see that again. I haven't got enough to PayPal you, Steve. I'm sorry. Do you accept Bitcoin?
I was looking for my phone, Simon. This is what I'm going to tell the papers when they ask what was going on. I was looking for my phone, and I tilted the laptop screen down.
I mean, obviously I took a screen grab because I'm that. I will post this on the Discord once people can see what they missed. We could play a few party games with it. The old pin the tail on the donkey. Pill the P on the S. That's what it would be. Crikey, that's thrown me.
Simon and I were exchanging WhatsApp messages on Friday, I think, and in our social group, which is at the moment determining exactly what the One Life Left team are going to be doing in Tokyo. One of the group asked if I had a photo of something from our past, and Simon said, "Steve has everything, and I subsequently proved that, didn't I, by exchanging photos? Well. Now it seems like you have something.
I mean,
of your own.
Yeah. Look, we're recording this at Monday lunchtime. I've not eaten, thankfully. Otherwise, it'd be all over my keyboard. Crikey!
Shorts weather, isn't it, Simon?
It is shorts weather, Steve. But I'm wearing shorts without flaunting the goods. Look, there are 3 in the audience now. Have they heard? Word is spreading across the internet. There are 3 people watching us now. Do you want me to sit out of this? Mm-hmm. And let you get on with whatever it is you do?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Own Steve fans?
That's good. Did you just come up with that on your own?
Of course I just came up with that, yes.
Very good. We're a video game radio show. We're going to be talking about video games for the next 57 minutes or so. I have a lot to talk about today, Simon.
That's great, because I'm speechless.
We'll be doing video game letters.
We will.
Video game news in a bit with Charlesbot, who previously to this point, he's been the sexy one, hasn't he?
He has been the sexy one, yeah.
And video game reviews. Did I mention that? Letters?
I don't know. I wasn't listening, Steve. I can only hear through my eyes at the moment. It's such an overwhelming sense of being unable to shake what I've just seen. I don't know.
I thought last week's show, for our first show after a summer break, went really well. I thought we were quite professional and on it right from the start.
I'm going to find a way of getting this photo on my phone, and I will show it to you after the news.
We are a video game radio show. We're going to be talking about video games for the next hour. We broadcast on Resonance 104.4 FM, the greatest radio station in the world. We're also a podcast. And we've been doing this for ages, Simon, haven't we? But we've never had an intro like this one.
Been a long time, Steve. Well, no, because we've never seen anything like that. I'm going to just hold this up for you now. I do have an example. It's actually, given the way that your hands were moving, it's missed a few things out. But, I mean, look at that.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey? Doing well for yourself, Steve, aren't you?
No one needs to see that.
I can pop it in the Discord if there's enough demand. Or I shall save it for a special occasion.
Well, there'll be many of those when we broadcast from Tokyo later in the year. That's exciting, isn't it?
Very exciting. It's under 2 months. We will be in Tokyo, and we will be under your control, listeners. So if there's things you want to know, things you want us to investigate, things you want us to buy you, or even just comments you want to make on the size of Steve's business, we're there for you. Please write in to
team@onelifeleft.com. It's not the only trip we're doing. We're doing the big two this year in our new spirit of seizing the day, taking One Life Left out on the road, doing Bristol in a couple of weeks. And we've talked already twice on the show about how we really need to plan ahead for that. How's that going?
Yep. I mean, planning-wise, I have asked for clarification. So this is... See, we broadcast live on Resonance, which we love. We are also our podcast is managed by Pickaxe, and they're doing a Pickaxe week. So that's all of their podcasts will be broadcasting live on their Twitch channels, on the Yogscast Twitch channels, in a couple of weeks' time. Now it's an hour and a half that Steve and I are doing. That's as much as we know. We're going to be the two oldest men on the internet.
It's incredible.
So I sent an email this morning just saying, hey, realise we've not really been thinking much about what we should be doing. Do you have any special instructions? Can we have guests? Do you expect us to play video games? I will let you know when I hear back, but we are desperate for suggestions because, it's just going to be Steve and I floundering, I think, unless we have any specific preparation. But, our day jobs are busy enough, so don't know.
Well, we did have a suggestion in the One Life Left Discord, and we'll talk about that in the letters section. But I think it's already 7 minutes past the hour, so it's probably time for us to get on with the news.
Me, Charlesbot 1.1. Rumours are swirling that a classic Nintendo series F-Zero could be making a comeback, according to Twitter user Pioro, known for accurate Nintendo leaks. The speculation stems from a cryptic tweet referencing a MATLAB function, F-Zero. No official announcement has been made, but Nintendo traditionally hosts a direct live stream in September. The last F-Zero game was released 19 years ago, and fans have been eagerly awaiting a new installment. Nintendo veteran Takaya Imamura has previously suggested outsourcing a new F-Zero to a third-party developer. Even I, a bot, am excited to see if these rumours are true. But let's hope the new F-Zero isn't a game of waiting another 19 years, because that would be the worst type of long-play game.
Good. I'm tremendously excited about this, Simon.
So had you seen these rumours?
I had. I have had time to process them, and adding them to the rumours that have been building for the same sort of sources. I assume, setting my expectations low, this is going to be a remaster, or not even a remaster, a release of F-Zero GX on Oh, I was going to say a virtual platform, but that's not a thing, is it? They don't have that for GameCube games. They only have it for N64. So it could be F-Zero X on N64. Is that already there? That is already there. So it's got to be a remaster of F-Zero GX, surely.
Got to be.
Has to be.
Well, has to be. I mean, we've been here before, Steve, so I'm surprised to hear you talking with such enthusiasm, rather than being worried that this is this isn't going to come to pass, or that it's just baseless speculation. It does seem that you're on board with it. We should know this week, because that's when the direct is likely to air. We don't get a lot of notice on these things, so between now and the next show, Steve, listeners can currently enjoy your enthusiasm and tune in next week for your disappointment.
What do you think it's going to be, Simon? What's your instinct?
Well, I think it's going to be F-099, isn't it? It will be a battle royale version of the earlier F-Zero games.
Oh, you think?
That's what I think. They've done a couple of games before. They've been very reluctant to develop sort of new versions of the game.
Yeah.
Since the GameCube. So I suspect that would be my... If I was a betting man, Steve, which I am, I would put £1 on that being the outcome here.
Okay, which engine, though? So are we talking, SNES era?
Yeah, or Game Boy Advance.
You think? That one? Because I would go for that in the... Oh, that would be great as a 3D thing. But yeah, the 2D one, less interested in that, fewer interested.
Okay, so talk us through your thoughts and feelings now. Because I can see it. I was going to say I can see it on your face, but that's preferable for what I was looking at the start of the show. But I have to say, let's have a look now and see what's going on down there. Maybe I could whisper some suggestions, and we can see what you're really thinking.
Are we brainstorming new Twitch features right now? I'd play it, wouldn't I? Would we need to?
You would.
Would we need to be subscribers again?
Yes, you would. Yeah, because it's online, isn't it? It's going to bring you back.
Would work, wouldn't it? Not sure. I do hope they do something. I tell you what, I had when I'd set my expectations as low as I previously could, without you moving the bar down slightly. I had thought, well, it's probably going to be a remaster, but maybe it'll be a remaster in the vein of Mario Kart. Not that Mario Kart 8 is a remaster, really, but the way they've retrofitted the ability to add more tracks to that would also make sense. So if they put out F-Zero GX, which we know because there's GX and AXX is, has slightly different tracks in it as well. If they put out that and the ability to, hey guys, subscribe for another year to Nintendo, whatever the thing is called. What is it called? What is the online program called?
Nintendo Online. Thanks. I think it's just called, isn't it?
Very creative.
Basic
subscribe for another year to Nintendo Online. We're nearly out of Mario Kart tracks, but you can get another, season pass or 4 season passes for the F-Zero thing. That would make sense. I was like, yeah, that's great. But thank you for resetting.
Well, let's see. I mean, you can tell I actually don't know anything about it, because there are occasions sometimes, Steve, when I do have inklings of actually what is going on, but I've heard nothing about this one.
That is absolutely what is setting my. If Simon knew this was going to happen, he wouldn't say it. Therefore, we're just betting on you. And would I bet on you? Not sure.
Nintendo has been discreetly showcasing tech demos for its next-gen console, rumoured to be the successor to the Nintendo Switch, in private at Gamescom. These demos feature an advanced version of Zelda. Breath of the Wild and Epic's The Matrix awakens Unreal Engine 5 tech demo, both operating on the new console's target specs. The console is anticipated to employ NVIDIA's DLSS upscaling technology, which could lead to improved graphics and frame rates. Although the company remains silent about the new hardware, it's speculated to launch in late 2023 or 2024. So stay alert, folks. Is it a coincidence that the new Switch was revealed at the same time Broken Sword Remastered was announced? The answer is yes.
Very, very high walls at the Nintendo booth at Gamescom, I noticed.
Weren't they? And again, how can you tell which publishers haven't seen the Switch 2? Oh, they're doing a story about it on the radio show. I've not seen it. So, I was I mean, actually, going back to the days of the original Switch announcement, I was part of the group that did see stuff early. Yes, we were shared back in the day as my previous place, where we were shown what the features were, what it would be doing, sort of targets, hardware, and stuff. And as an illustration, I mean, as a Nintendo fanboy, I was incredibly excited for the first time to be invited in and hear all this stuff. But as an illustration of how secretive they are, I mean, the NDAs and the things you need to sign to say you're not even going to tell anybody. Sorry, you're not tell anybody that doesn't know. Are pretty heavy documents. I was really excited. I was like, God, I need to be able to talk to this. I couldn't talk to you about it at the time because I hadn't heard that you'd been disclosed. I had a relative who worked at Nintendo. I appreciate that sounds like I'm at school. But I said, oh, can I tell can I talk to X-relative about this? And they went, no, this person doesn't know themselves yet. I know. So then, reading about they were showing it off at this Gamescom, where I was a little disappointing.
Diligent listeners to One Life Left could go back to the archives and listen to what you were saying about it. And compare.
I think, I remember being really intimidated by what we had to sign at the time, so I don't think I would have said anything.
Have we talked about on the show before about when I was in a similar situation with the PlayStation Vita? Like back in the day. So I was one of the first people on the planet to see the Vita when it was very rough model of what it was going to be, obvious prototype. And we were the first studio outside of Sony to be given the specs and a dev kit so we could work on something for it. And this was super, super exciting for me, but also absolutely terrifying. Like, you had to sign a huge thing, which basically said I'd be going to jail for a very long time. If I told anyone, and by jail I mean just basically money jail. Yeah. So they would take all my money and everything I owned, and I'd get in a lot of trouble. So I was very scared, very excited, and all this was fine, except... Once I was flying, so the game was being developed out of a studio that I was creative directing in the US. I flew into San Francisco airport, very, very excited, and got to immigration, and I'd had my passport stolen like the time before, and so I had a new passport, and they took me to secondary to check my new passport. And the guy there said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a video game developer." He said, "What are you working on?" And I said, "I can't tell you." And he said, "Well, I can't let you into the country then." And that's where you're broadcasting from. Yeah. That's what it felt like, because then I got basically taken to a literal holding cell, where I just had to sit there and think, what am I going to do in this situation? Don't have my phone, can't call anyone, can't tell anyone where I am. I know there's someone on the other side of the airport waiting for me. And I genuinely had no idea, because, I talked to people since, and they've said, well, I think in that situation you would be allowed to tell them what you're doing. But it felt very high risk to tell just a random guy, "Oh, I'm working on this new game for a new piece of hardware for Sony." Anyway, eventually, there's no dramatic end to the story. I am still there. What happened was the shift changed. Like, a new guy came on and said, what do you do? I said, "I make video games." He said, "What do you do?" "I can't tell you." He said, "All right, fair enough. Let me go." And that was that.
Oh, I don't think you have said that before. That does sound terrifying. When I was working on the Doctor Who games with the real Charles Cecil, we went down to see the new TARDIS with some journalists. Kieran Gillen was there, and it was at this nondescript building next to a petrol station in Cardiff. And going in, we had a similar thing. We had to put our phones in a box. We went onto the TARDIS during a lunch break in filming. It was Matt Smith's first series, so we went in. And they had David Tennant's TARDIS, which was all destroyed, spoilers, and Matt Smith's sort of new one. And I had to put my hands behind my back because you weren't allowed to touch it. But the TARDIS has been designed almost explicitly, I think, to try and make you want to grab hold of bits of it. But the NDA that we signed then meant it would be illegal for us to tell anybody about what we saw, but equally illegal for other people to hear it. So we could have been in a position where I could have just whispered something to you, and that would have been illegal.
Amazing.
I could have made, if I'd been brave enough, I could have made every listener to One Life Left commit a crime, as opposed to just us doing it weekly.
Universal Studios has launched a spine-chilling The Last of Us experience at their Orlando and Hollywood parks as part of their annual Halloween Horror Nights event. Visitors are guided through a recreated, abandoned Pittsburgh by actors playing Joel and Ellie, while other actors portraying various creatures jump out at them. The event, running until November 4th in Orlando and October 31st in Hollywood, features a total of 10 and 8 haunted houses, respectively. The Japanese park, while lacking the Last of Us house, boasts a Resident Evil-themed house, among others. So grab your torches and courage, it's time for some frightful fun. Now imagine a Broken Sword theme park attraction. You'd probably find yourself solving a mystery in a replica of Paris, complete with a goat blocking your path every now and then. And don't forget the ride, the Templar's Curse, where you'd be chased by a giant rolling stone. But remember, it's all fun and games until someone loses an ancient manuscript.
Did you ask?
It's not bad, is it? It's not bad.
Did you ask the AI just to imagine that stuff? Or?
I did, but I used sort of slightly. I mean, it's probably what you're doing all the time, Steve. But me as an AI novice, I explicitly asked it to come up with what a Broken Sword theme park would look like using real world examples. And that's not bad, is it?
Really
I would have appreciated it if it said being chased by an old rolling stone like Mick Jagger. I could chuck that in on those lines. But I was impressed with that. Did you see this?
I did not see this. What do you think?
Oh, nice idea. It's a shame that it's only temporary, I think. But I've not watched the video yet, but I can imagine. I mean, it's exactly what you want if you've played the games, you've enjoyed the games, the idea of going into a Last of Us house where, if you those unfamiliar with the games, the enemies within usually just react to any noise. And so having to sort of tiptoe around that would be pretty scary. Similarly with Resident Evil as well. Should be a lot of fun. So looking forward to hearing some more stories about people that are able to enjoy them during this limited season.
Which game would you theme a haunted house around? And I guess, I mean, which would terrify you the most?
Yes, it would be... the Resident Evils, wasn't it, or something around? I think Resident Evil or the original Condemned were two games that I found incredibly.
Do you find Resident Evil scarier than Silent Hill? Silent Hill's much more frightening to me.
Yeah, I haven't played a Silent Hill game for such a long time. For some reason I just bounced off that series, so that the bits that I have played have been quite brief. It was a game designed around a hardware limitation, wasn't it?
The fog, which is smart, right? Like,
yeah.
Smart. The other one that always springs to mind in those sort of haunted house is Project Zero or Fatal Frame, which I thought was also smart because it took away the combat element of shooting at ghosts or stabbing ghosts or any of those things, and just said take photos of them, and so you feel defenseless in that kind of way. But I definitely think in a horror house sort of situation, it's Silent Hill. You don't want those corridors and the things looming out of you. Tension. I wonder if anyone's made a PT haunted house.
Just a big loop.
Yeah.
And
then you take it away before you actually get to play it. Like,
exactly.
Very good.
Hold on to your joysticks, folks. Sega's classic arcade racer, Daytona USA 2, is finally getting a home port, a mere quarter of a century after its arcade debut. The game will feature in Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name, under the new title Sega Racing Classic 2, cleverly sidestepping any pesky rights issues. Other arcade classics like Fighting Vipers 2, Flicky and Galaxy Force are also set to join the party. Despite Sega Sammy selling off its arcade business in 2022, it seems the spirit of Sega's arcade glory days lives on. Now, where did I put my driving gloves? And speaking of Sega's next moves, I wouldn't be surprised if they start including ports of old games in their new ones. Imagine booting up the latest Sonic game only to find a hidden Puyo Puyo level. Or what if the next Yakuza game had a secret Streets of Rage minigame? At this rate, we might see a Golden Axe boss in the next Football Manager. Sega always keeping us on our toes. Or should I say our joysticks?
Yes. I mean, that is literally what this is about, Charles. So, like Sega,
yeah, but Golden Axe boss in Football Manager was a nice idea.
Yeah, it did feel at the end of that story like he was just brainstorming material and just jokes, and he was like, "It's not working. It's not working. It's not working.
Yeah.
Here's
Working.
the one." Yeah,
exactly.
That's the one. So I've played a lot of the Yakuza As Was series before. I always find these moments where you discover the arcade machines and you can play them a lot more interesting than actually playing them. There's that like peak of like, oh my goodness, I can sit down and I can play Outrun, and you do it twice, and then you're like, not going to do it again, which speaks to I think the thing we mentioned a few weeks ago on the show of you spend more time setting up these retro arcade machines than you do actually playing them.
Yeah, I agree. It just seems a real shame to sort of like effectively paywall this behind not just like money you need to spend on another game, but then the time that you invest in sort of getting that far.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it gets people talking. I think the idea of putting something unreleased in there is absolutely, that's more likely to get me to get that far. Yeah, you know, for those that have been desperately waiting for it, the fact that they're only going to be able to play it within another game seems a bit of a shame.
Have you played any of this series before? Ever sort of sunk real time into it?
No, I keep meaning to, and I have got Yakuza 0 and Like a Dragon Ishii installed on the hard drive for those times that when I'm going to go, I'm just going to start this now. No, I've not got too far into them.
I think they're really enjoyable. Like they're almost. The reason I haven't gone back since I think it was 6 or something like that is I know I will enjoy them all, and they are template things, right? The world is much more fun than a Western version. It sort of laughs at itself. It's aware of its own limitations. It plays to the tropes of the series as well. And the experience is a lot more varied within them as well. I find like the missions and the mini games often distracting, but you can easily end up sinking, 100 hours into it, and you come away, or I come away going, I haven't learnt anything. It's just the same as the previous one. I've enjoyed it, and sometimes that's enough. But there are so many games at the moment that I'm trying to play things and get things out of them from a design front and from I've never seen that before, which is not what you're going to get here. Clearly, as a big part of the appeal is putting retro games in there.
Well, we are going to be there in a couple of months, aren't we?
Do you think maybe you should play one of them in advance and
we can recreate it?
Xbox chief Phil Spencer has been dropping hints that the forthcoming Elder Scrolls 6 might just be an Xbox exclusive, following in the footsteps of Starfield, which is only available on Xbox Series XS, PC, and Microsoft's Game Pass. This is Bethesda Game Studios' first release since Microsoft bought its parent company, ZeniMax Media, in 2021. Spencer said that Microsoft considers exclusivity on a case-by-case basis, aiming to give players a choice in how they play. However, he remained elusive on whether Elder Scrolls 6 would be Xbox only, citing the game's far-off release date as a factor. Now, if Phil Spencer wants to get Broken Sword as an Xbox exclusive, he might have to pull out all the stops. Maybe he could challenge the developers to a game of Elder Scrolls 6. If he wins, Broken Sword becomes an Xbox exclusive. If he loses, well, let's just say he might have to rename the Xbox Series X to the Broken Sword box. Or perhaps he could try a more diplomatic approach, offering the developers unlimited access to his personal stash of Mountain Dew and Doritos. After all, who can resist the allure of gamer fuel? And if all else fails, he could always resort to a good old-fashioned treasure hunt. He could hide the rights to Broken Sword somewhere in the world and then send the developers on a real-life quest to find them. If they succeed, they get to keep the rights. If they don't, well, they've had a fun adventure at least. But let's be real, the most effective method might just be to promise the developers a cameo in Elder Scrolls 6. Who wouldn't want to be immortalized in one of the biggest games of all time?
All right, talk us through that then.
He's got some thoughts, hasn't he? Got some thoughts.
He really does.
I mean, obviously those thoughts were lengthy, but it was interesting to see where he went on what Phil would need to do to make Broken Sword an Xbox exclusive.
Yeah,
I hope Phil's listening.
Describing Elder Scrolls 6 as forthcoming feels a bit previous, especially since the stuff we talked about last episode of One Life Left.
Well, absolutely. And the other thing, of course, is that we appear to be giving Phil a lot of leeway because you make video games, Steve, don't you? And so the implication that Phil's giving here when they decide, on a case-by-case basis, game-by-game basis, what formats to publish it on, is that at the end of this, when you've finished making the Elder Scrolls 6 and at the end of the code you type "the end," That's when you think about what formats you're going to be publishing on, isn't it? And then you just go and export to PlayStation. Yeah, exactly.
Who shall I give this to?
Exactly.
Who would really appreciate this? Yeah.
So, we will be taking a view. Well, you should probably be taking a view now if you're going to be doing it. So I think you're going to be unlucky, PlayStation owners. That would be my guess.
I do, but by the time we get to that point, the landscape will be vastly different anyway. We're talking...
Well, we will all be playing it on the Broken Sword bot.
For a start. Yeah, it's been a good week for Charlesbot, I think. This week.
I mean, yes, there is one joke with Charles. It's either Broken Sword. Well, actually, all the other joke is his relationship with his AI wife. But it's a bit Broken Sword heavy this week, but made me laugh.
Yeah. Thank you to you both.
One Life Left video game news with
me, Charlesbot 1.1.
We are One Life Left. We're a video game radio show based around London in the UK. We broadcast on Resonance 104.4 FM, which is a fabulous radio station. You should listen to all of their other shows. We're also a podcast. You can find that at www.onelifeleft.com. The podcast is put together by our under caretaker, Phil. He does all of the edits and he does the socials and all of that kind of thing. If you want to know more about the show, you can find the show notes and other stuff at hello.onelifeleft.com. I think we've already dealt with most of our other business before the news this week, haven't we?
We have. You should just talk about Maraoke in Bristol in a couple of weeks.
That's right. We are doing Maraoke in Bristol. In fact, a poster for it is being drawn right now. That will go out tomorrow. There'll be tickets available. You can find those at the usual places, but on the One Life Left Discord, on the Maraoke Discord. There are tickets available right now. I think they're a tenner. And we're doing it on which night is it? Tuesday night? It's the
Maraoke's
26th.
Wednesday.
Is it? So 27th, that's right. Maraoke on the 27th at a new venue in Bristol. So super, super excited about that. We'll also be doing a gig in October in London. We haven't found the venue. Well, we think we found a venue. It'll also be a new venue. But we'll talk about that more maybe on the show next week.
Good.
Time for the letters?
Letters.
Email, messages, and forward BCC. One Life Letters.
Thank you for your correspondence last week and before. Sorry we didn't deal with them adequately last week. We will do so now. So, Raging Crins wrote on the Discord. Hi, Steve and Simon. Simon here. Just want to start with, I love the show. I'm a few episodes behind, but that makes August better. Just listening to the episode where Steve talks about his dice game. I have to say it sounds amazing and right up my alley. He then hit me with bad news. He talked about the platforms and didn't mention Xbox. Just want to ask, is there a reason for this? Also, second question, Simon, more Yogscast games on Xbox, please. Thumbs up emoji by Simon. Thank you for that. Lovely message. Always nice to hear. Steve, are you bringing your game to Xbox?
Might be. The reason is it's early right now and it's easy. The test that we are going to put out in, I think, 4 weeks' time, something around then. The test is going to be on PC, and it's just a test. It's not early access. It's nothing more than the combat part of the game. I'm sure I mentioned this when we were chatting about it before. But the test is on PC, and then once we've got that, we're going to be looking at platform. We'll, like we said on the show, we'll finish it, and then we'll decide on the audience. We'll go, who deserves this? I'd love to see it on as many platforms as possible, and that includes mobile and handheld formats as well. But for now, just testing on PC.
And then in terms of Yogscast games coming to Xbox, we announced last week that Playtop will be launching on November the 2nd, be on Xbox and also into Game Pass. So look out for that. And we do have some more coming next year as well. So hopefully you'll like them too.
I should say testing on PC and Mac, because it runs on my Mac, although it's also makes my Mac run very, very hot because it has not been optimized. So if you've got a Mac that you don't mind being hot, then you can play that on it. Second letter. Do you have one? Shall I find it?
They're all from the mailbag. Okay. Tim writes, Dear Simon Bot and Steebot and the real Charles Cecil, the case of Thaler versus the Register of Copyrights in the US has raised the question of who owns the copyright on AI-generated image. Apparently, human interaction is required for copyright to be granted, and the work done by AI counts for nothing. Since it's now possible to get AI to generate entire video games, which can then be played, and the video recorded by AI, and then uploaded and edited by AI, does that mean we can just replace Twitch with a phrase of provide a weekly stream of a Space Invaders type game in ChatGPT and rake in the millions? Which do you think are the most streamable game genres? Thanking you, Tim. You're our resident AI expert, Steve. What is this case? And did I even pronounce it right?
I don't know that case.
Sounds like you're involved in it, actually. Denial.
Streamable genres, though, Simon. Surely it's the simplest streamable genre for you to kick out a game and the AI could do a good crack at is the anger-inducing, rage-inducing game, right? The one that streamers like to yell at, like Only Up, which has recently been pulled, I believe, from Steam completely forever, according to the dev.
Indeed, it's like the times that Flappy Bird was pulled, that the developer said it was just causing them too much stress.
Yeah. But there are plenty of Only Up clones
aren't there?
Taking their place. So that seems to be the easiest thing to kick out if you want to have a go at streamer baiting. Otherwise, it's the kind of, I imagine, like the things where the streamer gets to tell their own story rather than just reiterating the story in the game already. So they get to generate something. That can be an open world type experience or a roguelike, that kind of thing. You're the expert though, Simon.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, sort of non-linear games are the most difficult. Emergent gameplay is the easiest. Not all streamers are the same, though. You think, there is a sort of stereotype about, streamers always wanting stuff that's always chaos and everything on fire all the time. But different streamers like different things. So, we like card games at the moment. So that's what we're looking at from a Yogs Games point of view.
I have something here from One Life Left show chat, which is a little bit of advice on the Discord for Twitch. Stuart writes, I'm too old for Twitch too, but I understand it's some sort of site for selling used bathwater. Maybe you could do that.
I mean, maybe it will resort to that. Who knows?
Let's see. In the future, anything's possible. If you have any suggestions for what we do on Twitch, as Simon said earlier in the show, please email
team@onelifeleft.com.
Do you have any more letters?
We do. Matt has written in today, Dear team and maybe SSG, poking at my phone the other day, I saw that Apple Arcade tells you which titles are leaving the service. Among them is my kid's favourite, Assemble with Care, or the Fixing Game as she calls it, and a game called South of the Circle, which turns out to be a narrative game set in the Antarctic, but which tells its story partly through flashbacks and uses some nice gamey tricks to manage the switches. Driving a vehicle through a blizzard in Antarctica becomes driving a vehicle through the streets of somewhere else. Flashing beacons in the snow resolve into rural English train station signal, that sort of thing. I would almost certainly have missed this game, which I'm enjoying, without its impending removal. What games have you discovered either just in time or just as they cease to be available to you? Cheers, Matt. It's a great question.
Ooh, very good question.
What happens to these games once they leave Apple Arcade? Do we know? Neither of us are arcade subscribers, are we?
We're not.
Are you able to buy them?
Yeah.
I mean, so I know that both of these are available on PC.
They're already... Oh, sorry, you mean available on iOS?
Yeah.
I imagine they'd go straight into premium status. I've seen the Arctic one at trade shows around the place.
It's
I
lovely.
always thought it looks absolutely beautiful. I'm glad it's found a home there, because those games sometimes struggle to get the sort of publicity that requires that brings them an audience. So that's great news. But yeah, it's interesting being alerted, much like people get alerted to Netflix removing shows or whatever by saying only a week left of this. I can't think of an example though for a game, because I don't use that service, that I've been alerted to too late.
No, I use a plugin on Steam which tells you if games are in bundles. It tells you if they're on any subscription services. Frequently when I'm browsing, it says leaving Game Pass soon. What Microsoft does, I believe, is that if a game is leaving, it's quite public about them. It gives you an opportunity to purchase them to own at a discount, which is quite a nice way of doing it. I hope a similar thing is happening over on the arcade.
Friend of the show, Tony, has added in One Life Left chat, if something leaves Apple Arcade, the devs need to republish it as essentially a new game, which may or may not be worth the effort.
Yeah, thank you for the insight, Tony. Tony's launching his game a week today, isn't he?
Very soon, Dungeon Golf.
Yes, you should come on and talk about that next week. Maybe talk us through what it's like to launch a game, Tony, if you fancy it. Although I'd imagine you'll have other things to panic about on launch days. I love a launch day and I hate a launch day.
Talking of user contributions, listener contributions, if you want to write a letter for next week's One Life Left, please do so by emailing
team@onelifeleft.com,
or you can drop a note on the Discord. It is 42 minutes into One Life Left, our second episode of this new season, and things are going pretty well after a interesting start to the episode.
Is that how you describe your top shelf content, Steve? Interesting. When it's time for Steve and Mrs. Steve to show affection, is that time for interest?
Is this how you prompt Charlesbot? Is this what you do when you're sweet talking him for the news?
Along those lines.
We left our review section too late last episode, and I wonder whether we should start it now, because I think we've probably both got a lot to say about Starfield.
There's only one way of finding out, Steve, isn't there?
All right. Do you know what? I'm going to start the reviews jingle.
Someone is at the front door.
Did you hear that?
Did hear that. Do you want to go?
Ring doorbell.
I heard. Didn't mine went off last week, didn't it?
It did, yeah. I can see that the post lady's there. We could do some unboxing. I'm not sure that's going to get through the letterbox. Yeah, I can't go and get it, can I? Let's carry on.
So I've stopped the reviews jingle because we did review Starfield last week. I'd like to sort of discuss it in a little more detail this week, because it's what the whole internet is discussing, and because I have a load of thoughts about Starfield and I'm struggling to put them into the right order. I don't think I'm ready for my definitive review of Starfield yet. So I thought maybe we can hash those out between us.
Okay, come up with the official One Life Left verdict.
Yeah. How are you finding it, Simon?
Well, I play these types of games differently to you, and it's been a long time. I mean, I remember when Skyrim came out, and both of us absolutely fell in love with it, and it occupied my thoughts, much. Just I fully occupied them almost, it seemed, for for months and months and months. So Starfield was excited for, I haven't, in terms of sort of tentpole releases this year is crazy. But this is the one that I was looking forward to the most. Even went to the extent of inviting a friend over from Iceland to unlock it early. Now I'm playing it on my ROG Ally. And so again, I've been back enjoying how to play PC games again, which is an enormous amount of tinkering. I found myself back on Nexus mods over the last week. I know. There was some posts on the subreddit just saying that there was this amazing mod which enabled it to run particularly well on the Ally. And I have to say, it's up and running. Minimum 30 frames a second. Often into the mid 40s, depending on what sort of environment that you're in, and it runs beautifully now. Obviously, it's got low level of detail and all that sort of stuff, but it's an absolute marvel. I never would have dreamt that a AAA game that seemingly is bugged on many other formats could run so well in your hand. And so I haven't been able to sort of play it for extended play sessions, dipping in and out of it here and there. And I'm very much Johnny Main Quest is what I'm doing. My side quest prompts are filling up, but I'm mainly getting on with the main quest. Pausing, only to go and buy. Well, I've been reading guides as well. PC Gamer told me when to go and buy a really good pistol early on.
Okay, so
I did a little bit of grinding on that and went to Exclusivity and bought it from the lady there. The Endurance, it's called. It's a really good pistol. And I'm putting my skills points into ballistics and pistols and persuasion. See, that's the type of guy I am.
Okay, so I started with the persuasion skill because I was really enjoying the dialogue stuff in Baldur's Gate. Really enjoying sort of steering that, and that waiting on every dialogue option in Baldur's Gate felt like I want to pick that, but I also want to pick that, and I know that one's going to result in a dice roll, and then maybe I won't pass it. It really felt like it had consequence, and so I wanted some more of that. I was less interested in the sort of shooty part of Starfield. So I chose that, and I have been hugely disappointed in the dialogue in Starfield. Partly on a straight-up writing level. Like, I think the writing is to me, and obviously this is subjective, but the writing seems quite poor. It lacks personality. It lacks any kind of intrigue, or it's never funny. It's never it's never pointed. It's just all in the middle. It's kind of blah. It's just there. And yet simultaneously, all of the three options I am given every time, I think for every one of them, I wouldn't say anything like that. I'd never say that. I wouldn't say that. That's, each of them seems annoying. And furthermore, it doesn't matter what I pick. It never matters, because they just funnel you straight back to the next thing. When there is a persuasion game, it feels like a lottery, and it doesn't front page what is happening there.
I had to look at a YouTube guide to understand how persuasion works, and having done that, I still don't fully understand it. However, yesterday I was in a scenario where I wanted to persuade somebody to do something, and I didn't, and I'm like, oh God, don't know what to do now then. Because I hadn't unlocked another skill that would have, I think, given me a solution. So I'm like, I don't want to do this, but I'm committed. I'm not gonna reload. I failed that persuasion check. So I went and had a look around, sort of other bits and bobs to do. And like sometimes, the way that these sort of branching games work, where obviously what they can't do is present you with an unsolvable scenario. And so, like, if you haven't developed the lock-picking skills to unlock a door, just look to the right. Normally you can hop over some barrels if you can't master the sort of expert lockpick. That's sort of generally how these things work. But yesterday I was in an environment, and I'm like, this is going to be a nightmare if I can't do this. And so failed that, and I couldn't get what I needed. I was like, ugh. The only way I'm going to be able to do this is to get the pistol out, use my ballistics, and cause trouble, which is what I started doing. And then things happened that gave me a different out of that, which meant that it didn't end up going out. So it didn't start as I wanted it to, and it didn't end as I thought it might. And actually, I was reasonably impressed with that. Those examples are scattered throughout the galaxy. They're few and far between. But yeah, definitely yesterday I was like, oh God, I'm going to have to do it this way now. Oh, okay, actually I can do that. So I quite liked that.
So I gave up with my, as you said, when we both got Skyrim, we approached it in very, very different ways. You are Johnny Main Quest, and I like going off on the side missions or just doing whatever I want and seeing whether that breaks. And in Starfield, very, very quickly, I found this is an empty universe with just stuff that the side quests all seem to be, go to this cave and get these things. Oh, you've got these things. Oh, here's some credits. Go and do this. Like, go and destroy these ships in space. And that just all felt boring and bland, and every location felt the same. And I thought, okay, I'll be Johnny Main Quest as well. So I've gone back to doing these things. Now, I loathe every character I've met, and not in an interesting way. In Baldur's Gate, I also really disliked them. But I disliked them because they were hateful people or selfish people or, hipsters or whatever. Here, I dislike them because they're just bland. They're just like the boring guy in the office who you just don't want to talk to. I really, really dislike everybody.
Does that mean that you're not flirting with them when you're giving the opportunity?
I'm not flirting with anyone. No, I'm just.
I mean, sometimes those flirt options come completely. It's like, do you want to flirt with this character? No, I don't.
No.
What about it? We're discussing some massive, honestly, world-ending problem. How about a little flirt?
At this point, I generally just choose the first conversation option because it doesn't matter. And when occasionally I choose one that's like a flirty one, there'll be an extra line of dialogue or something, and that'll funnel you back to the previous one. I don't. I've stopped caring particularly about the dialogue. So I've gone onto the main quests, and I am following them through and following these characters, seeing some. Why do Bethesda think that children are just small adults? Like, what is wrong with them? Why is that a thing? Anyway, and I'm still not feeling at all that I'm in space at any point, even, maybe in the space fights, but I'm just clicking around from scenario to scenario. The UI feels just impenetrable, even after sinking 40 hours into it. Just every time I get lost, it's so hard to bring up the mission screen. Like, I just find, and then sometimes it sends me directly to the planet, sometimes I don't end on it. Still not sure why I'm doing most of the stuff. And then yesterday I learnt my first space skill type thing.
Okay.
Have you done that?
I have.
Yeah. What did you think of that moment when you go into the temple?
It took me. I had to follow a guide to understand where to get to. Once I was in there, I did the stuff that you need to do. Although there wasn't any obvious feedback that you were doing.
I know.
Right thing.
I don't understand how that can happen.
Because it has a slight time pressure on it as well, doesn't it? Yes, but.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk about that explicitly right now. If you don't want to know what happens, it's early in the game. I don't think this really counts as a major spoiler because it's in a lot of screenshots I've seen. But you find these temples, and those give you the equivalent of the Fusro Dar Dragon Shout skills, right, for this game, which is effectively just for me Skyrim reskinned in space, but with less interesting side quests so far, at least. Anyway, you go into this temple. And you have to find the temple. Now, I found the temple on my own, which to me was also a bewildering setup, right? It says, look for the anomaly on your scanner. Poorly described, but eventually I did it. And it said, that will guide you to this temple. The temple, which is also the big pointy thing on the horizon, right? So maybe look for that instead of the weird anomaly in the scanner. So got to the temple, got inside. And you get inside, and there is a big contact-like spinny thing in the middle, right? Three circles spinning. And your little blue dot, which you spend about 90% of the time in in Starfield, just chasing this blue dot around, right? Just following it to your next mission. The blue dot goes missing, so there's no more guide as to what to do inside this room. There is another exit on the other side. You take that exit and you just end up back in the start again. So you're like, okay, well, I'll go inside the big spinny rings. Nothing happens. And you look around, and there's basically nothing to do there. So I left 5 or 6 times, and then eventually I'm like, has to be something there. There are these small clouds of sparkly dust, but they look like a spot effect, really. You wouldn't go, oh, that's a thing I have to interact with. And it doesn't interact in a press A, get close to it. Nothing happens. You get close to it, it disperses like a spot effect would do if you were inside it. But it turns out, in order to trigger the next thing, you have to fly into, is it 5 of them in sequence or something like that?
It's something like that, but if one disappears before you get to it, it appears that the sequence resets. Yeah. So you need to do that number again.
So I did. I flew into it without looking at the guide, and it dispersed. I did it a couple of times. No obvious change. There is a soft sound effect. That's it. Eventually, I looked it up, and it said you had to do it. I could not believe. I can't believe that gets through design and gets through production and gets through testing, and no one says this is a bad idea. Not least because while you're doing that, you're panicking. You're not even looking at the cool thing that's going on. This thing is spinning faster and faster and faster. And then you complete it and you're like relieved. It's the big payoff, right? It's meant to be the dramatic moment in the movie where you discover this magic and you're like, whoa, oh my God, now I'm part of something bigger. And instead, you're just bewildered. And that's what I feel about the game generally, is I'm bewildered at the decisions. And normally when I approach these things, I approach them as a person who knows video game design is hard. Making things is really hard. And normally when people go, oh, stupid devs, why didn't they do that? Well, there are 20,000 reasons why they didn't do that, and they found them all. But this, I don't get why you would put that in there. It would be better if you walked into that cave and the thing just happened, right? I don't get it.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. I found getting there harder. I couldn't see the tower from where I'd landed. I think there were elements of procedure generating stuff there, but and then there's that bit, because it's a circular room. You're never sure whether you come back in the way that you did originally and all this sort of stuff. So yeah. Anyway, but I got through, and I'm a fair bit further. I agree with everything that you're saying. I mean, the UI is cumbersome. It takes several button presses, and then if you want to, you get accidental button press, and to get back out of that, it takes even more. Mm-hmm. I love how generous it is with auto saving. It doesn't have the problems that some games do, where you can't do it within combat in inverted commas, and so it feels a bit more generous with it from that point of view. Like the deaths that I have had have mainly come from space combat rather than sort of gunplay or what have you. But even then, it hasn't been too punishing. I know people have been arguing about whether the fast travel sort of takes you out of the No Man's Sky style space travel. I've actually quite, the fast travel, if you complete a mission, then, some people seem to want to then walk all the way back to the spaceship again, but you can absolutely teleport to the next mission objective. Mm-hmm. And I'm for that. And you can still do that when you're encumbered as well, because, that's a real pain, is having too much stuff on you.
So annoying.
And sort of where to go and where to upgrade it. But I get the procedural stuff, and I get the sort of identikit bits. But for me, when you get to a new location, and I've loved Cydonia and I've loved Akula Town, I think they are great locations. The other bits and bobs I found have been cool. You sort of turn up and you go, okay, cool. What's the mini story here? It's like a self-contained episode. Mm-hmm. I got to a bit where there are clearly, I've made some decisions which will impact the game long term. Mm-hmm. Now, I suspect they are impacting the game long term, like most of these games do, which is that they make you think that they are, and actually they aren't. They're like replaying David Cage games, but I've sort of chosen just to sort of go with it. And so, yeah, look, I am having a good time. I've just got to a bit now where the threat has increased. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's see how we get on. So, yeah, I can see myself sticking with it.
Good. My game bugged out last night in a permanent way. The weapons no longer fire, and in order to do that, I have to go back several hours or wait for them to patch it. So we'll see whether I've got an update on that next week. 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
That's
Good.
the end of
there
the show.
We go.
We've got to
It
finish.
was 14 minutes. Well done.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks to Resonance for hosting. We will see you next week. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.